It's time for the chip race.
For strategy this week, I've been allowed back into the strategy box, but only on the proviso that I get taken down a notch once again by my... Well, it's becoming a bit of an ongoing rivalry between myself and fellow Unibet ambassador Daiva Byrne. We've got Daiva in the box again. Dara, you're here as well. And we're going to look at a hand from a side event that was played just before the Unibet Poker European Open in the Wynn Casino a couple of weeks ago.
In the gambling capital of the world.
In the gambling capital of the world, all of those things. In any case, okay, so here's the hand, and I'm going to give a sort of at least the pre-flop stuff. Daiva opens under the gun to 450 at big blind 200 with an ante.
So the third level of the game.
That's right. The opponent to her direct left, who I think was a little on the loose side. I want to say that just because it'll maybe make me look less terrible later on. 3 bets her, quite big actually. She makes it 450. He makes it 1650, and the action gets all the way around. The action gets all the way around to me on the button. And I have pocket queens, and I have just over 10k. I think I have maybe 10,500, something like that.
I think we should say that the starting stack was 12,000, and you have 10,000 left. So you lost a little pot beforehand.
We're gonna needle me for the chips I'd lost beforehand as well. Great, okay, awesome. Oh, what a wonderful way to begin. So in this spot, I guess I feel like I have a few options. One is to make a very nitty fold. 2 is to make a little clicky 3 bet. What that achieves, I'm not sure. Am I folding? Am I calling? If someone goes for the 5 bet, I don't really know. Do I just shove and sort of like hopefully just clear out all the hands that have some equity and most probably, always get hands that are worse than mine to fold? And I guess in this spot, as a theme, it's probably looking at a hand that is maybe best played one way and how to completely destroy it by playing it a different way. Daiva, what was your perspective on what I did, which was to shove my 52 big blinds into the middle?
My boy was crazy. I don't know what's going on, why you shoved. I literally put you on ace king or hand something like jacks. And obviously for me, it's just an easy call, the easiest call in the world.
You had pocket kings?
Yeah, I had pocket kings. I think we have 2 interesting factors to take into account is that the guy who 3-bet me to 1600, he was playing only 30 big blinds. So I guess that's what you take into consideration when shoving, because you didn't know what also to do against that stack and not commit yourself by I think betting.
Yeah, I think in that situation, I'm obviously playing for my whole stack against you, but I'm only playing against his stack, and maybe he's supposed to have the more likely to continue range, given that you're only going to be able to call with maybe a sixth of the hands that you've opened from that spot, given the amount of action. Now, Dara, you've done a bit of PO work on this one. You've been going deep into the solvers, into the machine to help us maybe figure out what I did wrong, what I could have done better, and maybe sort of, give a fuller account or appraisal of what I did.
Yeah, I just touched down in Vegas when you started whining to me about this hand. And my instinct at the time was that shoving couldn't be good because you are basically crushed by her continuing range when you shove. And you're folding out all of the worst hands. That's
so true, because I'm never calling with anything less than queens.
Yeah,
and sometimes I'd fold queens as well.
Yeah. But you argued your case quite coherently. So I went off and ran it through Hold'em Resources calculator, and the results were quite interesting. In your spot there, you also suggested the kind of clicky 4-bet that you can do. So I gave it that option as well. The first thing to be said is that the solver never wants to take that option with any hand. It either wants to shove or flat. Those are the only 2 options that it's happy to do with. The only hands that it shoves for value are aces and kings, because they're obviously in good shape against Daiva's continuing range. But obviously we can't be in a situation where we're just shoving aces and kings, so we need some bluffs as well. The hands that it wants to flat are queens and jacks, because they're both profitable flats. Queens is a very profitable flat. Jacks is a marginally profitable flat.
That makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, so then given that we want to have some bluffs as well, the way Hold'em Resources calculator splits its range is with a less than 50% frequency, it chooses some other hands. So about 30% of the time, instead of flatting with jacks, it decides to shove jacks. Basically turning sort of a slightly better than break-even call into a roughly the same shove. It also turns ace king sometimes into a bluff as well, and that's a good hand to do it because it's blocking the two hands that you don't want Daiva to have, aces and kings. The problem with queens in particular, and Hold'em Resources Calculator never shoves queens, is that first of all, it's a very profitable call. You basically printing money when you call there. And as a shove, it's just barely better than break even. So you're taking a hand which is very profitable in one range, calling, and turning it into a break even play in the other hand. And it also doesn't block any of the hands that you don't want her to have.
Yeah, and I think it's important at this point to point out that while Dara says there, and it's in some way a defense of my play, that it was a break-even play. Obviously, when you have two options, one's break-even, one's profitable, you should take the profitable one. Also, when you're in a tournament where, arguably the field was pretty soft, you should probably turn down even small edges. Teeny tiny edges can be left behind because you're looking for spots that have much more significant edge.
Yeah, I agree. And just, yeah.
Yeah, that's true. And I think it's also... It's also relevant that Daiva is involved in the hand because Daiva is not going to make a pre-flop mistake. So sometimes you can shove if you think that the player you're up against doesn't understand pre-flop ranges and will either call too wide or fold too wide. But I think Daiva's calling range will be spot on in this case. And Queens is crushed by that calling range. I mean, she's not going to call jacks.
No. Yeah, exactly.
I guess, and again, in defense of my play, which I'm acknowledging I made incorrectly, but I think there's a learning experience in this for other people who might have done the same thing as me, and that's why I thought it was a good hand to introduce here. I feel as though or at least in-game at the time, I felt as though I could get ace-king to fold. I maybe even could get two ace-kings to fold with this line. Maybe not with him, he's put so many chips in, but, so be it if I go to the races with him. But that you could only pretty much call with aces and kings, and given your opening range even under the gun, that's probably only about 1 in 6.5 hands that you might actually open there in that spot.
Yeah, I mean that's a reasonable point. Like, we're not saying that the shoving queens is a horrible losing play. It's slightly better than break even. And another point I'd make is that, like, sometimes when you talk these hands with players, they say, well, you don't want to flap because then you're playing queens against probably two players. But actually, that's a very good situation for you if it does go three-way, because you're in position. Yeah. You're against two players. You have a very strong hand for your flat. You have the strongest hand that you possibly have. If an ace or a king comes, it's going to be pretty easy to get away. If the flop comes 7 high, they're going to find it difficult to put you on a hand as strong as queens.
Yeah, I agree.
And they can also be card sharing in the sense that it could be like ace king against, ace jack or something. So they could actually have less outs. So you're actually in a better situation there against two players than against one.
That makes a lot of sense as well. The other point in all of this, I feel as well, was when I decide to go for the shove, and a clunky shove it is for 52 bigs, I am hoping in a way in that spot that Daiva will fold maybe an ace king or an ace queen or something that she would have.
Yeah, but basically worse hand.
And maybe get him in with a worse hand. Is he likely to call off in a worse hand in that spot? He's made quite a big 3-bet. Is it a mistake for me to even sort of disregard his 30 bigs and go, well, I'm supposed to gamble for 30 bigs with queens against his hand?
That's a reasonable point. I mean, he
had ace queen, he said.
Yeah, he had ace queen, and because he has ace queen, we really can't be sure how well he plays pre-flop, because he's supposed to 3-bet ace queen and he's supposed to fold to the shove, because it should be the worst hand that he 3-bets. But we don't know. Maybe, and you said he tanked in game, so maybe it wasn't clear. It wasn't clear to him that it was a fairly easy fold when you shove. So it's possible he's going to make a mistake. The big problem you have is, he's not the only player in the hand. So, and actually, Daiva stack is the one which can take you out of the tournament. So I think it's a mitigating factor for sure. The fact that you think this player is weak or maybe doesn't understand his pre-flop ranges as well and might call too wide. Like when we talk about weaker players, it's not just to say like this guy is weaker, so I should play differently. You also have to ask yourself, well, what kind of mistakes are they going to make? Are they going to make calling mistakes or folding mistakes? If someone's making folding mistakes, which means they're folding too much, then we should be shoving wider as bluffs. But if somebody is calling too much, they're making calling mistakes, then we can shove hands which crush their new calling range because they're calling incorrectly with weaker hands.
Yeah, and one final hypothetical I'd like to branch off with this hand, because it's a good one for the blackboard in a sense, is you mentioned there that the hands I'm meant to shove with and I'm allowed to shove are kings and aces, and they're obviously very good hands, and then I'm balanced that out with a little bit of jacks once in a while, and maybe an ace-king once in a while, because it has blockers, and that makes a lot of sense. The other thing I thought about, though, was like, okay, what if I do have aces? Should I ever just flat the aces in a balancing effect in that spot as well? Just so that my hand isn't face up, if you like, as like queens, jacks, and really narrowly like certain hands, so I can't represent all boards.
I don't think it's an issue if you play with a fairly face up range of queens and jacks, because I mean, what are the boards that queens and jacks have difficulties on? Well, ace high boards and king high boards, but I think you're going to fold those anyway.
Sure.
So it's not an issue that you don't have aces or kings in your range. So I think you could make an argument for flattening your entire range there as well. But then you're probably going to be a little bit unbalanced. I think you definitely do want to get certainly kings in pre-flop. You want to deny equity to ace X. So if we're going to shove kings, then we can't have a situation where kings is the only hand we're shoving. So I think then because we want to shove kings, we also want to shove aces.
Well, the upshot of everything was a bit of revenge, sweet revenge for Daiva, who, has played pretty optimally against me in all hands, but maybe I've just got a bit more fortunate, the deck bailing me out, or, the certain way the cards ran out, bailing me out in other situations. But, we have clearly seen that I have not played PO-approved poker. Daiva's playing PO-approved poker. Any final thoughts, Daiva?
Yeah, I just got lucky with kings. You had queens. GG. What can you do?
Kings, donkey with queens.
Yeah, what can you do? No, yeah, like you said, I think for me is the key point that in these kind of good structures of tournaments with loads of inexperienced weak players, I think you should just avoid high variance spots like that.
Against good players.
Against good players, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, because I would not really be playing anything, I guess, silly against you at this stage in the tournament.
Absolutely. Okay, well, thank you very much to both of you, as usual, Daiva and Dara.
Welcome.